I'm sure COD fans wouldn't mind because it's certainly one of the best optics in COD history. And for me, it was so good that it got the number 2 spot today. Despite how good a gun is in Call of Duty, sometimes the iron sights, they just suck. And thankfully, there's a solution for that. Optic attachments were first introduced in COD 4 and have since expanded to be one of the most important aspects of the entire multiplayer. But what optics, well, what ones rise above the rest? And what ones are the most heavily used in their respective games? What is up, everybody? Chaos here. Welcome to the COD History Series, and today we are going to be taking a look at my personal picks for the 10 best optic attachments in Call of Duty. So let me know which of these you use the most, which one you use the most now. Drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, turn on the notifications, and here we go. Up first today at number 10 is the thermal scope in Call of Duty Ghost. Now, the thermal has been in quite a few Call of Duty games with varying levels of actual helpfulness. The Modern Warfare 3 thermal scope in particular comes to mind when talking about crappy sights, but one of the best thermal sights we've had in COD was the Ghost version. Now, many thermal sights have the problem of being too bright or not illuminating enemies good enough, and it makes them difficult to track, and overall, it's really just not any more helpful than a normal optic. The Ghost thermal sight, however, was available on the sniper rifles and was one of the most used optics in the class. This sight kept the most black and white style of the Modern Warfare thermal sights, but made enemy bodies much more obvious and easy to see. And in a game like Call of Duty Ghost, where sometimes the lighting and the color scheme could get annoying at range, this sight was extremely helpful. I think it's a good way to get today's video going. At number 9, we have the MMS in Black Ops 2. Now, BO2 introduced a lot of new optics to the COD series, and it updated a lot of the older ones to how they are today. One of the new sights that was added was the MMS, or the Millimeter Scanner, which was often used by campers and people hunting other campers. Every 2 to 3 seconds, the MMS would show outlines of any stationary or slow-moving enemies, which would allow you to track people through walls, which was very helpful in modes like Search and Destroy and Hardpoint, where many people like to play slow and methodical and close to the objective. Now, this sight would also zoom in less than normal red dot sights, making it good for close-range combat, although it struggled in mid and long range. Now, the MMS also featured very thin outlines, allowing for improved peripheral vision and very little obstruction. A lot of people hated it because of how annoying it could be. It was to be tracked, honestly, but others loved it because it was a direct counter to campers in more passive playstyles. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on so you always get alerted when a new video goes up and you can get that elusive first comment. Next up is the VMC in Infinite Warfare. Not a lot of people actually remember the attachments in Infinite Warfare, and I don't really blame you for that, but there were actually some good ones to talk about. One of the standouts was the VMC, which was kind of a futuristic version of the variable zoom sight from previous games, and it was arguably the best version of all of them. It was a very clear, non-obstructive sight that you could toggle between close and long-range visibility, making it very helpful on assault rifles and LMGs for players who like to play defensively and hold down positions while still being ready for close-range combat or camping. The VMC sight was definitely one of the best sights in Infinite Warfare, other than the standard red dot, and I think it gets that number 8 spot. I think that's a good spot for it. Next up, and I know I'm going to get some hate for it, but we have to put it on here, okay? The Target Finder in BO2. One of the most hated optics in COD history. It was introduced in Black Ops 2, and thankfully, it hasn't come back ever since. This sight had a relatively low zoom when aiming down sights, but what made it so annoying was the fact that it would put a big, fat, obvious red diamond around any enemy who came into view, even if it was just for a couple pixels. Putting a target finder on an LMG sitting in a corner and just aiming down sights into a hot spot became a pretty common strategy because of how powerful it was, and the LSAT with the target finder became a meme in the Black Ops 2 community due to how strong it was, but how much it was looked down upon. The target finder was a camper's best friend, and the majority of the community hated it. But this isn't a list of the most loved optics. This is a list of the best optics, and the target finder was certainly one of the best around. After all, that's why people hated it so much. It was that good. At number 6, we have the red dot sight in Advanced Warfare. Everybody knows what a red dot sight is. They've appeared in pretty much every Call of Duty game. However, when making Advanced Warfare, Sledgehammer did something a little different with it. Rather than doing a traditional full circle or oval with the border, they decided to take the top border off and make the sides thinner, leaving the red dot to kind of float by itself in the middle. Now, this was probably just intended to be an aesthetic change to make the attachment fit with the futuristic setting, but it actually greatly improved the traditional red dot sight, and it really served as an early version of the fan favorite ELO sight, which Black Ops 3 would introduce the following year. So you guys tell me, do you prefer the AW red dot sight or the Black Ops 3 ELO? Speaking of Black Ops 3, let's crack into top 5 mode here with the thermal sight. Now, the Black Ops series has reworked the thermal sight quite a few times. In Black Ops 1, it was a bunch of gray hot garbage. In Black Ops 2, it was swapped to being a weird combo of green and orange, but in BO3, it found its sweet spot. The BO3 thermal sight used a dark blue background when aiming down sights with an orange outline, and it filled out the enemies. Plus, it had dozens and dozens of reticles for you to choose from and make the sight easier for you to use. The thermal sights were often used by snipers and occasionally some LMG players, and as far as thermal sights go in COD games, this is the way they should all be. Enough with all the flat gray coloring that's difficult to see through. Just go with the blue and orange. It's crazy how much of a difference can be made just by changing the colors around a little bit. Let's jump back to Black Ops 2 at number 4, and we go with the holographic sight. Now, this sight didn't debut in Black Ops 2. It was greatly improved upon, and it gave us the format that just about every COD game uses now, though. The holographic sight has always been a middle ground between the red dot and the ACOG, but many players often complained that it was too awkward or clunky looking in Modern Warfare 2 and 3, so people didn't really use it. But in Black Ops 2, Treyarch reworked the sight to be much more coherent and helpful, better serving its role as a close mid-range optic. The BO2 holographic sight was a fan favorite, and nowadays, pretty much all holographic sight styles, in COD at least, are modeled after the BO2 version. Speaking of ACOGs, at number 3 we have the ACOG sight in MW2 and MW3. Now, it was first introduced in COD 4, but I think we can all agree that one wasn't that great. Sure, it gave you some extra zoom when aiming down the sights, but the COD 4 ACOG was really fat and obstructive. So when they brought it back in Modern Warfare 2, Infinity Ward reworked its look, keeping the zoom and making the scope itself thinner and easier to see through. It created a more helpful sight, I guess. And then they copy-pasted right over to Modern Warfare 3 a couple years later, and today it's pretty much expected of any new Call of Duty game. But if I had to pick a favorite version of the ACOG, I'm going to have to go back to the Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 versions. This thing worked so well with just about any gun in the game, and people went to town with it. So I gotta ask you, what is your favorite gun in Modern Warfare 2 or 3 to run their version of the ACOG sight on? At number 2, we talked briefly about it earlier in the video. The ELO sight in Black Ops 3. Now, it first appeared in BO3, but then it was brought back in Infinite Warfare, but I think we can all agree that the BO3 version was superior thanks to its more minimalistic design. The ELO sight was just like the red dot sight, but even smaller with slightly less zoom. Rather than give you that full optic, the ELO would just give you a little yellow dot pop up without the full border of the normal sight. So it gave you better peripheral vision, and it made it where you didn't really have to worry about missing targets because of a bulky sight. This thing was used extensively in competitive play thanks to its openness and how much more precise it allowed the user to be. It would be kind of hard to bring something like this into other COD games since it's a pretty futuristic design, but I'm sure COD fans wouldn't mind because it's certainly one of the best optics in COD history. And for me, it was so good that it got the number 2 spot today. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on so you always get alerted when a new video goes up and you can get that elusive first comment. Sometimes simple is the best. At number 1, I'm going to go with the red dot sight in COD 4. It's where it all started. The first optic attachment you were allowed to throw on your gun in Call of Duty multiplayer. This thing, it was awesome. The red dot sight was introduced in COD 4 and was unlocked after getting 25 kills with any primary weapons, excluding sniper rifles. You guys know the drill. It replaced your iron sights with a red dot display, which greatly increased your peripheral vision and was much less obstructive than any of the default iron sights in the game. The red dot sight was a hit with players and has since been brought back in every single Call of Duty game to date, either as the red dot sight or as a reflex sight. So while you may prefer a different version of the red dot, you can let me know what that version is in the comment section. I'm going to give the OG red dot the number 1 spot on the list, thanks to how heavily used it was in COD 4 and how massive of an impact it had on the future of the series and its customization system as a whole. And there you go, guys. Those are my picks for the 10 best optics in COD history. There's a lot more out there. It's a huge list. So if you can think of one that I missed that you felt was deserving to be on this list, you let me know in the comment section. As always, if you guys enjoy this series and you enjoy the channel, make sure you take a second, subscribe, drop that like, make sure you turn on those post notifications so you never miss an upload, and I'll see you soon.